Before we get into how the Maori built terrifying strength, let me ask you a question you'll almost certainly get wrong. When Europeans first reached the islands of Aotearoa and stepped ashore in front of the Maori, what do you think was the first thing they noticed? It wasn't the tattoos, it wasn't the carvings, it wasn't even the haka. No. They took out their journals and they wrote it down, documented, at the time, in their own hand. Perfect symmetry and great muscular strength. That's what these sailors saw first, not the culture, but the raw physical power of the men standing in front of them. But here's the part that should stop you cold. Every one of those men had built that strength before a single barbell existed in their world, before gyms, before dumbbells, and before a gram of protein powder had ever been invented. And yet, these were men who threw stones weighing 30 kilograms for sport, who carved war canoes 40 meters long out of a single tree, deep inland, in a land with no wheels, no cranes, no horses, not one draft animal, and then hauled that hull to the sea by hand. So how? How does a person with nothing to lift build strength that most men with a gym membership and every advantage of modern science will never come close to? Because they didn't stumble into it, they had a system. And when you strip that system down, it comes to 6 habits. I'm going to take you through all 6 one by one, what each one was, how they actually did it, why it made them so strong, and exactly how you can use it yourself this week. Because not one of these habits requires a gym, and every single one of them still works. Let's start with habit 1, the long lever. We need to begin with the weapon, because the weapon shaped the man. The signature Maori weapon is the taiaha, a hardwood staff roughly 1.5 meters to nearly 2 meters long, with a striking blade at one end and a carved point at the other. And here's what everyone misses about it. The taiaha isn't heavy. Its power over the body comes from its length. Hold anything at arm's length and it feels heavier. Extend it out further and it becomes brutal. That's leverage. And a Maori warrior spent hours every day controlling a long, whipping lever out in front of his body. Striking, blocking, thrusting, snapping it end over end, driving it from the ground through his hips while his hands and forearms fought to control the far tip. And it wasn't just casual practice. Young Maori trained in dedicated warrior schools called whare taua, the House of Martial Studies. Training began in youth and ran for years. They drilled the same strikes, the same guards, the same footwork, thousands upon thousands of times, until the weapon moved like an extension of the spine. And what does that build? Exactly the strength a gym struggles to build. A ferocious grip, wrists like steel cable, shoulders that can hold and control load at full extension, and above all, a core that transfers force from the feet, through the hips, out to the end of a 2-meter lever, rotational power, the kind that wins fights and breaks tackles. No machine trains it, because machines are engineered to remove the exact instability that makes you strong. How to use it today. Get something long and light and start moving it hard. A sledgehammer, a staff, a landmine bar. Practice swings, chops, rotations, and simply holding it out at arm's length for time. 2 or 3 sets at the end of a session. Your grip and core will tell you very quickly how much weaker they are than your bench press suggests. But a taiaha weighs a couple of kilos, and no amount of skill with a light weapon explains how these men moved 130 feet of solid tatara across 30 kilometers of open country. That took something else entirely, and it's the second habit, the collective haul. Now think back to that canoe. Because a taiaha is one thing, 130 feet of solid tatara is another entirely. No single man moved that hull. It took the whole community. 100 men on ropes, hauling in unison, wooden skids beneath the log. chanting to keep the rhythm so that 100 bodies pulled as one. On a slope, they'd snub the ropes around trees to control the descent, then haul again, for 30 kilometers. And this is a principle we have completely lost. In a gym, you are alone with a bar. You quit exactly when your body tells you to quit, and nobody knows. But when 100 men are on a rope and the log is moving, you cannot quit. The instant you slack, everyone else feels it in their hands. The rope tells on you immediately. That is a form of accountability that no app and no personal record can replicate. And the load itself was enormous and constant, hauling, dragging, carrying, lifting, for hours, alongside other men. That kind of work lays down thick, total body strength, because when you're moving a tree, nothing gets isolated. Everything works at once. How to use it today? Find the human version of that rope. Train with people who won't let you quietly quit. Sled pushes, prowler drags, partner carries, moving genuinely heavy objects with someone else. Anything where a real person is on the other end of the load, depending on you. Your effort jumps immediately, not because your muscles changed, but because suddenly quitting has a cost. But notice what they were actually hauling. It was a whole tree. And that raises a question most lifters never think to ask. Not how much they lifted, but what shape it was. Because everything a Maori warrior ever picked up had one thing in common, and it's the opposite of everything in your gym. Which brings us to habit 3, the awkward load. If you'd handed a Maori warrior a barbell, he might have laughed at it, because a barbell is a beautiful invention, perfectly balanced, evenly loaded, with a grip machined exactly where your hands want it. And that is precisely the problem. Nothing they lifted was designed to be lifted. Take those throwing stones. Contests were held with stones weighing 20 to 30 kilograms. That's a loaded bar, thrown for distance as a game. And there are no handles on a stone. No knurling, no grip. Just cold, uneven rock that fights you the entire way. Add to that logs, carved timber, food hauled back from the forest and the sea, and the bodies of other men in a grapple. Everything they moved was heavy, uneven, shifting, and awkward. And that awkwardness is the training effect. When a load is unbalanced, you can't simply fire the big prime movers and be done. Every stabilizer has to switch on. Your grip has to solve a new problem every second. Your core has to brace against a force actively trying to pull you off center. You're forced to become strong in every direction, not just the single groove a machine permits. This is exactly why a man can squat a serious number and then throw his back out lifting a sofa. He trained the movement. He never trained the mess. How to use it today? The awkwardness is the whole point. Train with sandbags, atlas stones, kegs, a single heavy dumbbell carried in one hand. Anything without a handle. Pick it up, shoulder it, carry it, set it down. 10 minutes of that at the end of a session teaches your body more about real strength than an hour on machines. Now, before habit 4, and this is the one almost nobody talks about, let me say one quick thing. If you want the deeper system beneath all of this, how the old world trained, ate, rested, and hardened itself into strength as one complete way of living, that is what the art of living like a man lays out in full. It is about strength as a way of life. Links is in the description. Because habit 4 is where their training does something no gym on earth can copy. Reactive training. Here's a question worth sitting with. When was the last time your training genuinely surprised you? A modern workout is entirely predictable. You know the exercise. You know the weight. You know the rep count. Nothing is coming at you. Nothing forces you to respond. Maori warrior training was the exact opposite. There was a game called poi rakau. A warrior stands alone in the center of a circle. Around him stand other men, holding sharpened sticks of hard mako wood. Without warning, one of them hurls a stick at him, point first. He has to catch it clean out of the air and instantly hurl it at another man in the circle, who must catch it and do the same. And it continues, and it speeds up. There was another, Paramako, where warriors threw and dodged real spears. And another, Wano, built purely for leg speed and explosive power. The ability to snap out of the path of a strike or explode into position to land one. Look at what these actually are. They're reaction training. Under threat, at speed, with real consequences for failure. The body isn't rehearsing a pattern, it's solving a problem that changes every half second. And that builds something a barbell cannot. Because strength isn't only muscle. It's how fast and how completely your nervous system can recruit that muscle when something unexpected happens. It's the difference between a man who is strong in a controlled room and a man who is strong when the world moves. The Māori trained that every single day, without ever needing a word for it. How to use it today? Put one thing in your week that you can't predict. Grappling, boxing, any sport with a live, unpredictable opponent. Even simple reaction drills where someone else calls the direction and you move. If every session you do is fully scripted, you're building half a body. So they had the load and they had the reflexes. But a body being worked that hard every day has to be fed. And what fueled all of this is the exact opposite of what the fitness industry would tell you to eat. Which brings us to habit 5. 2 meals, real food. We've talked about how they trained. Now, briefly, what fueled it? Because it's not what the fitness industry would predict. The traditional Māori diet was built on kai moana, food from the sea, fish, shellfish, eels, mussels, alongside birds from the forest, and root vegetables like kumara and the fern root, arue. It was extremely high in protein, very low in refined carbohydrate, and utterly free of anything processed. But here's the detail that surprises everyone. Te Rangi Hiroa, Sir Peter Buck, a Māori doctor and one of the great scholars of his own people, recorded that traditionally, Māori ate just 1 or 2 meals a day. Not 6 small meals. Not eat every 3 hours to keep your metabolism up. 2, sometimes 1. And these were the men hauling canoes overland and throwing 30-kilo stones for entertainment. Long stretches with no food at all, hard physical work in between. And when they did eat, it was whole food, with protein at the center of it. How to use it today? Don't copy their menu, copy the shape of it. Fewer, bigger meals. Protein at the heart of everyone. Food you could recognize in nature. And stop grazing. The constant snacking of modern life would have looked genuinely bizarre to men who ate twice and worked all day. Now you have the whole method. The levers, the hauls, the stones, the reflexes, the food. But here's the thing. You could know every one of those and still never do any of it. Because a method is useless without a reason. And the reason is the most important habit of all. Which brings us to the last habit. Strength that meant something. And this is the one that drove all the others. Because you can know every method I've just described and still never use them, if you have no real reason to. The Māori had one. It's called mana. Mana is often translated as prestige, or authority, or spiritual power, but none of those quite land it. Mana is standing. It's the weight a man carries in the eyes of his people. And critically, mana had to be earned, and it could be lost. A warrior's physical capability was tied directly to his mana. His strength wasn't a private project or a personal goal. It was visible proof of his worth to his people and a duty he owed them. There's a karakia, an incantation a wrestler would speak before a bout, that captures how they saw the body. My sinew is like the sky above. My sinew is like the earth below. That is what they believed they were made of. Now compare that with why most men train today. To look better in a shirt. To hit a number nobody else will ever see. And when motivation fades, and motivation always fades, there's nothing underneath it, because nothing was ever really at stake. The Maori never needed motivation. Strength wasn't optional and it wasn't decorative. It was who you were, and everyone around you could see it. How to use it today. Stop training for the mirror and start training to a standard. Tie your strength to something outside yourself, the ability to protect the people who depend on you, to work hard for decades without breaking, to be the man everyone calls when something heavy needs moving. Give it a reason that will still be standing there on the days motivation isn't. Now step back and look at the whole machine. Long levers that built grip, core, and rotational power. Collective hauling that made quitting impossible. Awkward loads that made the entire body strong. Reactive training that built a nervous system, not just muscle. Simple, protein-heavy food, eaten once or twice a day. And a culture where strength was a duty rather than a hobby. Not one of those required a barbell. Not one of them required a building with a monthly fee. And this wasn't primitive guesswork either. Dr. Ihirangi Heike, a Māori academic with a doctorate in exercise science, went back through the traditional practices and found something remarkable. Pre-European Māori had a complete strength and conditioning system operating at the highest level. Power, speed, agility, coordination, muscular endurance, aerobic conditioning, all of it drawn not from a laboratory but from the world around them. They had everything modern sports science has. They simply built it out of their environment instead of out of steel. And here's what I want to leave you with. This is not a vanished civilization. This is not a secret buried in the ground. Because 1,000 years on, and they are still known above all else for their strength. They never needed a gym. They needed load, they needed each other, and they needed a reason. Every one of those three is still available to you. The ancient way exists to recover what was lost. If this changed how you think about the way you train, you already know what to do.